Welcome to Hi Bob, the officially unofficial podcast for All Mankind on Apple TV Plus. I'm Jim,
I'm A.Ron.
and today we're talking season 4, episode 1, Glasnost. A.Ron, Glasnost, for the uninformed, is all about openness and transparency, none of which for All Mankind is interested in. I have two huge looming questions after this episode.
It's interesting. I'm curious to see what they are. Glasnost. We had Glasnost in our timeline. I'm not
The
impressed.
real world? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff in this first episode that makes me wonder if the Soviet Union is not about to fall in their timeline.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. It could go either way, right?
No, I see where you're going. Like it didn't occur to me when I was watching taking notes, but I think I instantly understand where you're coming from.
There's economic reforms that are happening that don't line up exactly with our history, but definitely like we're sort of precursors to the fall. There's strange people trying to get Margo's attention over there, probably KGB agents if I had to guess.
Yeah.
They're involved in, a sort of coup with Gorbachev. I did a lot of research this morning on perestroika and glasnost and all of those terms that I had never bothered to do prior to this. And I feel like that's where they're going, but who knows? Could be my imagination.
Interesting. Other than fretting about the world political situation, how did you like the episode? I've been waiting for you because I saw this episode like 2 weeks ago. I just watched the first one.
Yeah.
It was a concession I made to my son, who is a rabid For All Mankind a fan. And I've been sitting here thinking about it over the weeks. I know what I think about it. What do you think about it?
I liked it. It's definitely a setup episode, right? As you would expect from episode 1 of a season. They're just kind of catching us up on the last 8 years, telling us where we lie now, and they're also doing some stuff to keep it interesting, like the stuff with Gregory, however you say his name.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Like it though?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I always enjoy this show. Like even when it's not the most exciting show, which I got to say is kind of rare, but even when it's not the most exciting, it's still interesting.
It's fun. It's funny because I feel like the tone of this podcast 3 minutes in, it feels like we're somewhat disappointed or we're down on the season because I really liked this first episode. I thought this was a really good first episode in terms of like For All Mankind and terms. And maybe it's like, as I mentioned, there's a lot of things going into it. I think, as I mentioned in the preview podcast, like we're not finally catching up to, like, I know I was aware I was a person back in the early 90s, but I was like a 15, 16-year-old person. So it's like, it's a completely different experience now to see, like, when I was experiencing, I was like 23, 24, 25 in this time period, and I have full like opinion, like memories and opinions of the things that I saw, and I feel like that's one of the reasons this season so far is like resonating in a different way. That like this is like, oh man, these are our times we're living through, and this just really lays out what I really loved about the show: the camaraderie, the space danger, the space technology, the overall more, I guess, optimistic look towards the future that the show seems to consistently have. And it's like, through the first 10 minutes, I just kept on thinking, I wish I lived in this timeline. This timeline. This timeline has its problems too, but like there is a sense of hope and optimism in the early 2000s that was just completely missing from the American life, and has kind of since.
Oh yeah.
So it was nice, and seeing people like Ed. I love Ed. You gotta love Danielle. She's such a good fucking person. And the promise of what this season's going to be. Like, I am here for the tension between capitalism and community that's going to take place in Mars with so many people's hands in a cookie jar. You know, they got a block of nations to represent the corporate need, the interest of the G7, the M7 block. It's wild. It's wild to see it intruding into our little NASA story, right? But yeah, I loved it. I said in the preview podcast that I feel like the space crisis was a shot across my bow because, god damn it, it's more cables. The menace of free swinging cables in space is the ultimate foe for all mankind these last 2 seasons. But yeah, like I definitely got some questions. I want to kind of like figure things out with you about that sequence, but like nothing kind of leapt out as being just on the face of it crazy or silly, and I like that. I like that it's like, this show has the balls to kill what I consider a main character in the first episode, and for a hot minute I thought it might be Ed. Which is the strength of this show. The fact that, like, yeah, I could see them killing Ed Baldwin in the first episode of season 4. Yeah, nobody feels safe. So yeah, I'm just really so glad the show's back, and I'm so glad that things came together that we can cover it with our small little Happy Valley community of Bobs here. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this season goes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing all the things that I missed in this episode, because we do have screeners for this one, so we're recording before it's publicly available, which means there's not a lot of audience input at the moment. So I'm curious to see what people make of it. This feels very For All Mankind. I think the fans who are For All Mankind fans of the first 3 seasons are going to be there for this and enjoy it. But I don't know, man. We'll see how the season goes. It looks strong so far.
It is. It's funny you bring that point up, because that's the other thing because I think I've seen this episode 3 times over the last couple weeks, and I keep finding ways to ruminate. It's like, oh, we got a preview podcast. Let's get together and talk with Pete about it. I did think that, like, if you're a season 1 For All Mankind fan, there's like, what, 20% of the storylines left from that, in terms of characters and situations. And of that 20%, like only maybe 15% are actually represented on camera. And if you take away the characters who were like literal little girls in that scene, it's like the turnover feels real. And it feels like I am curious to see what they do this season with this Miles character, with Kelly's character, with the Will, the first openly gay astronaut from last season, like what they're going to do to it looks like that lady, like, contractor out on the Ranger might be important going forward. She's at least a major actor. Like, what are they going to do to take a step forward and like fill in those big old boots of Ed and Danielle and Molly? Because like right now they haven't. It's the potential's there, but like that's the thing I'm going to be very curious to see what they do this season, to see like what are we building towards for the future. Because like, as much as I love seeing Happy Valley expand and humanity to push out to the belt and beyond, like I gotta have characters that I give a shit about to make the rest of the stuff worth it, And that's the big open question I have this season is, where are the next gen people? Where and who is going to stand up, and who's going to resonate, like, Ed and Danielle and Ellen and Molly, and everybody has Gordo and Trace going back to season 2. Like where are these people?
Yeah, and even the people that they haven't outright killed in the show, they've sidelined a bunch of them that you thought were up and comers, right? Like Jimmy and Danny and a lot of the younger crowd there have just been completely taken off the map. So we'll see, man. I feel like Will is a strong contender for doing something interesting in this season. And of course, like I'm super, Aleda has always been one of my favorite characters ever since like season 2. And I think I'm worried for her, man. I'm really worried because I don't want to see her just completely wash out. But it feels like that's where she's headed, at least out of NASA.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, because that's one of the things about not, when you're watching this in like button down screener mode, is that I had questions like, what story are they trying to tell with Aleda? It's like, I was kind of expecting Aleda to be directing, like the like NASA's director of flight operations. Like she's Margo, she's wearing the white vest, and she's the head of thrust, which sounds important, but somehow disappointing from where I thought she would be. It's kind of like Margo's gal. And I'm like, is the show telling me that, or is the show telling me of like a pretty ambitious young person at NASA? Like, oh, she's in charge of thrust now. Like she's like on deck. So I just don't know enough about NASA culture to know if that's like a disappointing post for someone like Margo to kind of like crest at, or if this she has been, despite adversity, and this latest dash of PTSD is something more concerning. But like, yeah, I'm curious about that myself.
And it's complicated by someone that we don't know. We're not familiar with stepping into Margo's role, right? The Hughes, I think, is her name. I don't know her first name. But she seems to be running the flight operations there. We weren't really given that character last season, were we? So somebody...
So.
Though we don't know, is just kind of stepping into that role. It feels in that way that Aleda's been passed over, but she's also very young. So I'm with you. I'm not sure. Is this just is she still on the fast track? It's just she hadn't been far enough along when Margo was taken to Russia or killed, depending on who you are. Or is this just, them, or maybe herself sidelining her position here?
Well, I definitely want to talk more about it when we get to those aspects of the show. But there's a lot of discussion, because like the thing is the show doesn't hold your hand and tell you. Like the best you get is a headline. They'll spell things out in like the inter-season sequences, but a lot of this is just like fly on the wall. Like you're just observing conversations. Like what about this is important? What about this isn't important? What about this is routine? What about this is exceptional? And you just kind of find out as the season goes along. Unless there's some listeners in there at NASA's Johnson Space Center that want to give us the insight. Oh, she's a thrusty. Oh, that's where good careers go to die. Right. So you have the Delta V to get out of thrust. Oh man, it's like maybe there's a whole thing.
Probably. All right. Well, speaking of headlines and montages and stuff, maybe we should get to the recap.
Oh, one more thing, because I want to say this because people always bitch about it. Whenever ever hears that we have screeners, I think there's a sizable, and for understandable reasons, part of the fan community is like, oh my God, Jim and A.Ron are going to watch all these episodes, and they're going to know everything, and they're going to pretend they don't, and it's going to ruin my favorite podcast. Look, no, that's not how we do this, and you can believe me or not, but like, if you've listened to any of our screener covered shows, like it would be hard to fake the hilarity of the wrongness of the things that we've said if we did this to full knowledge of the seasons. What we do is like, because like, man, it was really gonna be hard to make For All Mankind work with some of the other things we're doing in our schedule. That we're still doing Loki, we're about to do Fargo, we're about to do all the Christmas stuff. It's spanning Christmas. These screeners help us do that because we, instead of having to wait and everything has to be recorded on Friday, oh my God, or wait until we can actually get this stuff recorded in advance and get it out at the same time the episode drops, which is a huge, leg up in terms of like getting it out in people's ears, right? But like we don't watch more than one episode ahead because we want to maintain that fan experience. We want to make sure that we can read email and speculate with fans and stuff. So it's like, again, believe me if not, but like we're essentially using this to time shift our viewing to like Monday, Tuesday instead of have to wait till Thursday, Friday. But that's as far ahead as we get. So rest
I have
easy.
not seen episode 2 yet.
No, and I pre-watched one because that's our policy. We can't get one ahead of you. But like I created a monster. My son's been up my ass. Did you guys record that podcast yet? It's because he's fiending for the next one. But yeah, I just like I know some people get all worked up about that. I just want to put your mind at ease if I can.
Yeah, no spoilers here. All right, let's start with a recap here. I'm not going to go over everything in this montage because there's a lot of it.
That's too damn bad. I'm going over everything in this montage.
You want to? It's going to take us all day, man. We're going to be here until we land on Mars.
So I wrote down the beats, the bullet points, and like we can react or not, but like Ellen appears. She's launching her second campaign. She's talking about pursuing the American dream and how that's the desire to go further and making the impossible possible. But she sets up what I think is going to be one of the central conflicts of the season when she cites that there are still a few trying to pull us backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to pay attention to. There is something called the M7, which is, I think, like the G7, whatever countries that represent the 7 countries. I'm not sure exactly all of them. I did see a Japanese flag. I saw a French flag. I'm presuming the UK's in there and Russia's in there. But the 7 countries that are on Mars in this international base. The AI seems to be proceeding apace. Like our world, in this world, Gary Kasparov is beaten by Big Blue or Deep Blue in a chess tournament in 1997. Ellen gets a second term. She serves with George H.W. Bush and Pam by her side. The UK ends its control over Hong Kong. I think this is ahead of schedule a little bit.
I don't know.
But maybe not. Maybe because I know that Hong Kong just came under China's control, but I think that was because there was like a cooling off period between when the UK gave up its protectorate and that. But I don't know. That was interesting. Mike Tyson still bit Evander Holyfield's ear. No change there. Helios has a plasma propulsion system that they say will shorten the Mars transit to just a month or 2. This is an important plot point, which is going to justify the action of the season. They did rescue our Mars crew that was stranded on Mars, and we'll get to hear a little bit about how that went down from Danielle later in the episode. So does the North Korean. The first man on Mars made it back to a hero's welcome. Hilton opens up a motel on Moon, and it's garish and tacky, and I don't like it. Can you imagine spending...
Yeah.
Can you imagine spending the money going to what it would cost to go to the Moon, and it looks like this? It looks like some kind of...
You're not
faux IKEA as imagined by Target of the future.
Yeah, you're not spending that money to stay in a swanky hotel room. You're spending that money to go to the Moon.
But it's funny because like all of the trappings of what we call wealth and opulence on Earth, like mahogany wood and rich leather and marble countertop, you're never going to find out on the Moon because. Like you're not gonna find it in a hotel. Like if a billionaire went to the Moon, they might spend it to put. But like, yeah, there's no fucking way you're gonna lift that to the Moon. It's gonna be all built out of shit. It's all gonna be aluminum, titanium, and lunar regolith, right? But still,
yeah, it's gonna be like Star Trek: The Next Generation without the carpeting.
Jimmy testifies in a plea deal against his bombing co-conspirators, and they don't mention the sentence that he gets, but Pete, our buddy Pete, said in those shorts that it is like a 12-year sentence, so probably won't get out of jail this season, I wouldn't think, or maybe towards the end.
Yeah. I'm interested to see the things you're skipping over because apparently Michael Jordan was good at baseball in this world. Like the Mariners are winning.
I really tried to get everything. I didn't. What? Wow.
Yeah, number 45 there. It's really quick. It's just a newspaper headline or whatever. I thought that was funny though.
Very nice. They're introducing asteroid mining. It's the latest kind of like space race for this season, obviously.
Yeah, and earlier there were antitrust lawsuits mentioned from the likes of all the oil companies, Halliburton and Exxon and Shell. That's setting up, I think, a lot of tension there.
Yeah, because Helios is trying to be the only person that can supply H3 for the world's fusion needs, and clearly a lot of dry beaks, beaks out here looking to get wet.
And it's a follow-on from last season where Helios had essentially made oil obsolete, and so much of like what's happening here, I think, is interesting from that context.
I thought it was interesting that it looks like Ellen is positioned as this universe's friends, which I looked into this, and Ellen's original title was Friends Like These, and it came out at the exact same time as NBC's Friends. And they changed the title because it was like obviously confusing. And it was a very successful show, and it kind of petered out in the 4th season when Ellen in real life and on the show announced she was gay. And during this kind of like tumultuous period, people are like, it's a political show. I don't want. And it kind of made, because it had to be about serious political things, it was less successful as a comedy, and it got canceled after 4 seasons. Apparently, since you got the president blazing the way, Ellen achieved Friends-like superstardom. I thought that was interesting to see, like, all this ripple out.
Is Jeremy Piven the Joey Tribbiani of Ellen?
I can only assume.
Yeah.
And is Matt LeBlanc, is he going to be starring in what was that? The Agent show? You're the one. You're the other Jeremy Piven show.
Entourage.
Entourage. Yes.
Yeah.
He's going to be Jeremy Piven's on Entourage. Hillary Clinton divorces Bill.
Yeah.
Very interesting to see, because I think this might be. There's a couple other indications here where they're indicating like the butterfly flaps of like more broadly speaking gender equality happening earlier in America because we were trying to keep up with the Russians, who on paper was very egalitarian in that regard.
Yeah, a lot
but
of
like Hillary,
societal.
having the freedom to divorce her husband and not impact her politics, I think is interesting.
Yeah, and the Harvey Weinstein stuff that they're gonna flash
have
up here
to
in a
think
second is another part of that.
Yeah, the fact that probably more women are in Hollywood because we've already had more women are executives. This stuff is all like, enough is enough happening earlier than you'd think. Same-sex legalization obviously happens earlier. This goes down in, I think, the late 90s, 1998. There's another article about Mars opening up its first aluminum manufacturing facility, showing that like Mars is becoming more and more economically independent from Earth. It's got this raw manufacturing down. Marv, the wet bandit from Home Alone, got his act together and became Lee Iacocca's right-hand man. Apparently the man that saved Chrysler from craptitude because they pivoted early into EVs. Good job, Marv. And yes, I will be calling him Marv throughout this season. I don't care what my co-host does. There's a moonwalker strike. Like I said, where capitalism comes to space and the labor movement is right one step behind them. I thought it was interesting to throw away comment about the Y2K bug wreaking havoc on the space program. Is that like a one-off like joke, or is that going to be?
I assume it's one-off now that we're past 3 years past that. Like, it can't mess with
I would
it for
hope
3
so,
years,
right? Ed's going to try to do deorbit burn. It's like, damn it, it's good to. All the atmospheric calendars are from the 1903. This is odd.
Yeah, they all die. Yeah, that's how Ed dies, on his way back home.
Gore beats George Bush, interestingly enough. And
he won
Ellen
Florida,
marries
I
Pam.
saw in that election map, which I thought was nice.
Ellen marries her long-term love interest, Pam, and Saudi Arabia overthrew the House of Saud. The royal family deposed.
Apparently.
Yeah, you can see that, like, like everything that the George Clooney said is going to happen in Syriana is probably happening on fast forward, with the world completely divesting itself of petroleum products. Reality TV, moon miners is sweeping the nation. It's a huge Russian economic boom, and they show in like a little graph chart that Russia's GDP is only $1 trillion or $2 trillion off of the United States at this point, which is vastly different than our reality. They emphasized the Gore and Gorbachev alliance, that their growing partnership that they feel both on Earth and Mars, ushering in a new sense of optimism, not just in America and Russian, but across the globe. The Cold War has ended, not as Russia a vanquished foe, but as a valued and equal ally. Very interesting. Yeah, and this brings us up to the present day, where old man Baldwin is trying to make history again.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick still died relatively peacefully in his sleep at 70.
That happened the exact same, right, as our world.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, there's some other incidental stuff in there, but that's the gist of it. Holy shit, we made it to Mars. That took forever. We're 45 minutes into this podcast already. Let's go. We're going to Happy Valley, where the Mars base has gotten a lot bigger. There's dozens of modules, dozens of crew persons. Old Man Ed is commanding a mission to land a man on an asteroid, and Grigori is that man. This old man makeup, I think, looks better here than it did in the trailer. It's probably exactly the same, but I got used to it over the course.
You've just gotten used to it. You're like, ah.
Yeah. It wasn't a flash right at the end of the thing that scared me.
Yeah, it's tough. I imagine it's tough to make someone like Joel Kinnaman look like he's an old over the hill person. Having said that, I don't know why this show seems like it has a uniquely hard time doing it with their cast. Like, it's like it feels like a show that was filmed in 1990s and then was upscaled to HD. And like they just didn't know. They just didn't know those latex lines were going to be there. They didn't know that it's like. Sure. But you guys, you know that this is 4K. So like, what's the deal?
I think they hit it all right. I think Danielle's old woman makeup is much better. She looks just totally natural. But
it also helps that she's kind of like Joel Kinnaman last season, where it's like, a little gray at the temples, a little spirit gum along the eyes, get a little bit of wrinkle. Yeah, they haven't heavily aged her.
Yeah, they don't. For some reason, Ed's facial hair looks weird. I'm certain it's his own facial hair, right? He's got to be growing out a beard for this, and then they just dye it.
I mean, look at it's the hairline though. That's the other thing. It's like they are doing significant hair, and so why wouldn't they do a beard on him too?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Something about that beard looks weird.
It's not bad. It's just it doesn't feel state of the art for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's been a couple seasons, so at this point, I'm ready to call it a trend or a stylistic choice. Like maybe they are going more stagey. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Why not? Let's go back to Earth, where Daniel Stern, Eli Hobson, is the new NASA administrator. The long-term... Marv, yes. The long-term mission here is not just to touch an asteroid, but it's to gather up this asteroid and send it over to Mars so they can use its resources to start building out the base even further. Aleda is running the thrust station. And we get some speech here from, I think is it Elena? Director Katish, or however you say her name.
Yeah, it's, what was it? Lenara Katish.
Yeah.
Miss Katish, as she was referred to. The Russian space queen, essentially.
Yes. The person who was, like, threatening Margo last season, kinda.
Yeah.
Was over there... making
always holding Sergei's leash, yanking it,
making sure the Russian interests are considered. Some woman named Hughes has taken over mission control here. Got Margo's old job. I don't recognize her. Maybe I should from a previous season, but
I was wondering because I actually ran out of time to do all the research I was trying to do because I spent like an hour and a half just reading of like early new millennial history, right? And like doing all that kind of stuff, and it's just so fascinating. And I'm like, holy fuck! I'm not even 5 minutes in this episode. Oh my god, I gotta get going. But I tried to. I wanted to see because like if we have seen her before, she was like some kind of like deputy director that was behind somebody, and I mean we might have met her and known her name because she's standing behind this general, but there's no way she had a huge speaking part in the previous seasons. I don't think, but watch me be wrong.
Sure.
We kind of already talked about this, but like I had a clear, and maybe I was just being ridiculous, but I had a clear thought that this is representing Aleda in some kind of career plateau. That, I think the show was like going through the motions, and I certainly was anticipating seeing her as the director of flight operations there. And I get it. Maybe
with that what they showed us in the end of last season, right? I mean, she was running a mission. I don't know what happened.
But she's in her like mid 30s, maybe late 30s. Yeah. Is that young to be running like all of like space flight?
I assume so.
Maybe she just but like the other thing is it also makes sense that like all these government jobs are insanely political. And if you had like Margo, who was the lady of NASA, as your kind of like handpicked protege, and kind of put like, bet that makes you a lot of enemies. And then if she's gone, even if she's gone in like a heroic death that she died and that gets you like 6 months. And then after that, all the knives come out and the power games go. So I wonder if she just got like outplayed or outmaneuvered. There's she like, who else would sponsor her there at NASA besides Margo?
Yeah.
You know, most of her friends left for Helios, right? Mm-hmm. She might have been just kind of like on an island, and she was kind of always a prickly type person anyway. So I think they are telling the story of like, yeah, she should be more than just thrusts. But
well, I can't tell if it's self-sabotage. You know, I don't necessarily blame her. She's clearly got some traumatic stuff she's dealing with. But is she doing this to herself, or is the machine doing it to her, right? Is the political machine doing it?
I wish we'd gotten an episode before the PTSD reintroduced itself, because I didn't get anything of her like not being an exemplary employee. She seemed engaged at the job. Of course, this is like, you know, if you're not going to be engaged on this day, when are you?
Sure.
When you're about to make historic first contact with a fucking asteroid. But no, I think, yeah, it's like, I think that story they're telling is that, you know, she's traumatized, but this isn't the type of trauma that gets triggered every day. You know, not every day are you in the center that you were at with the alarms going off and everybody running around screaming. And it's like, that's got to be particularly hard.
You would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like here, you know, with this first contact that Grigori makes with the asteroid, I like that he gets another big historic moment under his belt before what transpires later in the episode happens.
That he shares all to himself. This isn't something that he got stolen. I guess that's the thing, is that him and Danielle wrestled for it, but then it turns out the North Koreans get it. So
yeah, I do wonder what the state of that is, just I guess politically, or in the public eye, or even in the eyes of the people working at the organizations at Star City and MSCS or MCSC.
I bet it's like any sporting event where it's like, at the end of the day, it's what the scoreboard says, but the refs fucked us, and our quarterback was hurt, and also if we
didn't show up,
if we had to slow down to bail out the Russians, or if we didn't have to slow down to bail out NASA, or if we didn't have to with
the North Koreans, right? It's like, if we didn't show up, they never would have even known they got there first. So, you know.
Right, that's another one. Yeah, like the only reason you guys were even, it's kind of like Eric Leeson getting credit for discovering North America. It's like, he doesn't really, even though it happened. And then I guess if you really wanted to be technical, the people discovered North America were some kind of people either paddling or crossed a land bridge 30,000 years ago. So like, I don't know.
Right.
It's one of those things where I think it's funny how this show kind of has those perspectives. Like, they understand that this is kind of ridiculous, but also it does matter, not just to the people involved, but to the nations and to the world. You know, it's being the recognized first is a hell of a thing.
Yeah, I want to see if there's any real animosity there, or if it's just if they've moved past it.
It was a beautiful and ever since the word moment. Like, I loved him, like, you know, trailing his fingers to like get traction, and just like him standing on the world's tiniest, the solar system tiniest planet. It's like Mario Galaxy, right? You see this guy on this like rock. It's super cool, and the sun behind. It's a really, really beautiful shot, and I love that 4 seasons in. I was wondering about that too. If the show could still generate that sense of wonder.
Yeah, it does.
Know, like space is a fucking construction site now, and you just clock in, you wear your hard hat, but like, can they still generate that juice? And first episode, certainly, in my opinion.
Yeah, that and the very last shot of this episode, I think both get there for me. Although I will say this asteroid is not as big as I expected it to be, I guess. Like, this is the kind of... this is about equivalent to what you could mine in, I don't know, a day at any given mine here on Earth. Doesn't feel like there's a ton of resources in that asteroid, but I guess that might not be true. Maybe relative to what they can get out of Mars, this is a huge score. That's what the episode's telling me.
It's funny because I tried to look up information on this asteroid, which I think is XF or XS Kronos, spelled with a K. I can't find anything Now the other thing is like Kronos has been shitted up by a bunch of fiction series, including The Expanse,
Star Trek.
but I tried to do some I tried to do some stuff that like filtered all that stuff out. And I think this might be a fictitious asteroid, or it completely destroyed my ability to find anything about it. Because I know that there are thought to be asteroids out there that have like literally mountains of platinum in them. Like they're, for whatever reason, like all this or like the ones that are like the nickel, cobalt, like are extraordinarily rich in like metal minerals for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that like this is cheaper to get materials to Mars than it is from Earth, and maybe even cheaper if you just want to put the stuff in orbit. Why the fuck would you put it into a gravity well to begin with? Just keep it, you know. And but yeah, I kind of thought that too. It's like, wow, this is kind of overwhelming asteroid. But what are you gonna do? Start off a series?
Sure. Yeah. No, you got to do some test runs.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Soviet Union, where Margo wakes up, gets ready for her day in the frigid USSR. She walks down to the bakery, gets pastry, and then the newsstand to get a paper, and then to the park to eat and read. And she sees a headline that Grigori landed on the asteroid.
Yeah, it's interesting. Margo in the Morning, Russian edition. Looks like they were taking a shot at Eastern European dentistry, because I've heard that's one of the, you know,
healthcare
like,
in general.
Yeah, but it was free. That's the thing. It's you know, there's trade-offs, but I've heard consistently that the dental work in Eastern European countries during the Cold War is particularly atrocious. It's one of the ways that they could easily identify like agents. Like if you found a dead agent, like prop their mouth open, it's like, Jesus Christ, this shit looked like it was done in 1937 when it's 1973. It must be a Russian. So yeah, like I thought that was, and her tucking like giant hot water bottles into her coat to stay warm.
I guarantee the Russians aren't doing that. Or the Soviets aren't doing that. The Soviets are out there playing in the park with their coats open. Like she's just this.
She's giving herself away.
She's from Texas. My God, you know.
And you can tell.
Oh,
like every
my
time
God.
she open the drawl that she brings to the Russian language, I think is particularly entertaining and enjoyable. And then you get this, like, this is kind of like a montage of it kind of like sucks to suck, right? But it also reminded me of, and again, this is like in a post Glasnost, better world version of Russia, but it kind of jibes with what I've appreciated when you read about people from all different times and cultures, is like life is pretty much life no matter where you are. You know, there's the old bickering with the young, there's people bitching about politics, there's, you know, friendly neighbors, there's neighbors you don't like, there's a beautiful park that you can find and sit in a newspaper. Like, you know, Margo's got a good life here by any stretched imagination. When you think about where she could have been speculate 8 years, where she's like, Jesus Christ, she's going to be in like one of those Stranger Things, Sheriff Hopper labor camps. No. But she's still being followed, or like, let me ask you your read on this. Is Margo still being followed, or is Margo surprised to find out she's being followed again?
I think it's the latter.
I did too. I feel like obviously she's probably followed left, right, and center the first year or two, but then they got bored, like, she's not going to do anything weird. But like, this isn't like, oh my God, I can't believe these guys are still following me. It's just like, oh, that's weird. Someone's following me.
Yeah. And given what we see later with her encounter in the park, I think there are new developments on that front this episode.
Yeah, agreed.
And it kind of plays into, you know, what I talked about in the opening here with where I think they're going with the Soviet Union. They're pushing in two directions here, because I feel like the economic boom that happened in the period between seasons is kind of pushing in the direction away from like Reagan, who, because Reagan didn't become president, there was and they didn't need oil. There was never a push to really like drive the prices down. Yeah, and so the Russian economy took off instead, right? In a different direction. They didn't get their economy suppressed by low oil prices. And I think they're headed in that direction on one end, but in the other end, I feel like there's a KGB behind the scenes thing going on with Gorbachev here that is very much mirrors the fall of the Soviet Union in our world. So I don't know. I don't know where they're going with this, but I could see it going either direction.
Yeah. I have a feeling, like last year I said, the Woody Woodpecker reference where it's like, if Margo had only gone to the FBI, none of this would have ever happened. I have a feeling I'm going to say more than once, if Margo had only gone to the KGB, none of this would have ever happened. Like, I kind of feel like
yeah,
it's going to be repeated last year. It's like you should just turn this over to internal security. What do you do? What are you gonna
there's no I really want to talk about that.
You're gonna be the American leader of the coalition against the Russia. Like, what are you doing here, Margo?
Yeah, it's kind of wild, but we'll see what she does with it. Maybe she will turn it in. We only see her pick the card up, so
it's true.
Maybe the Soviets are poisoning her with baked goods. There's
Margo
a little something extra.
Margo famously able to ignore pulling at threads.
Oh, of course.
Just gonna let this obvious mystery go. Not gonna call that phone number.
I think she's being slowly poisoned by the Soviets with baked goods. There's a little something special in this batch you can't refuse.
Let me give you the powdered sugar, which is actually radioactive stuff we shaved off the elephant's foot in Chernobyl. Like, it could be. It's more of a Putin thing. We're still in the Gorbachev era.
Sure.
Got to get the Yeltsin and then Putin. We got Well, we'll wait until 2007, 2008. That's when you start getting your ass poisoned.
Yeah. The other thing that's mentioned here is inflation is becoming a problem there. The economy, and this kind of mirrors what happened too. The economy is moving so quickly and growing so fast, and privatization is happening, like an open market, and suddenly people are unable to afford the goods that are on offer, whereas there was a lot of price control before, which let them afford those goods. So,
and the state owns everything, so selling to private interest is a quick way to turn the buck. Like,
right.
I don't know where it's up on the ballot today that Cincinnati could sell this railroad that we rent to some railroad for $25 million a year. And my understanding is we want to sell it for $100 million paid over the next 4 years. And I'm like, well, how the fuck does that make sense? How the fuck did something the city built 100 years ago that makes us $25 million a year in revenue, we're going to sell it for 100? What? What the? That's the thing that
it's crazy.
It's funny is like when I was watching this, I'm like, I wonder how many Americans watching this are deeply empathizing with the Russians as depicted on this show, because like the Russians on the street are talking about all the shit that we're talking about now.
Sure.
Like runaway inflation, the fact that it doesn't seem like anyone in the government has any answers for us little people, the fact that like, feel like
so
we're
getting
our pockets
overseas,
picked and,
we're not doing stuff here.
Not doing stuff now, but like also low-key, no one's interested in doing things here either. It's like, it's I would have never thought that back in the early aughts that I would ever be like, oh yeah, fucking Russians. I understand where they're coming from, but then the next 20 years happen. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. Let's go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. A guy named Miles, who we don't know yet, is looking for his good shirt for an interview. He's over at his wife's father's house, I think, is what he says at some point. I don't know. She's staying there with her kids. It's clear they're separated. She wants him to sign the divorce papers, and he thinks he can still make things work because he's got an interview coming up that's going to change everything. It's a mining job on the moon. And she tells him, don't get your hopes up. This is the most Armageddon thing since 1998. Like, this is really so Armageddon, it's crazy.
It really is. And you know what, Bruce Affleck, Ben Affleck, apparently you're wrong. Because it apparently might be cheaper to just bring miners up to the moon rather than train moon astronauts to be good miners. That's at least what For All Mankind has looked at the numbers and they check out. This woman that plays his wife looks as close to Rebecca Ferguson as the law will legally allow. I think that if she looked 1% more, that Rebecca Ferguson could sue this woman's mother and father for brand infringement. She is not Rebecca Ferguson. She's Shannon Lucio. This is wild. I actually thought like, oh my god, Rebecca Ferguson, like it's wild that she starred in Silo. Now she's playing like fourth banana to Opie here and For All Mankind. It's I couldn't believe it wasn't Rebecca Ferguson.
No, it looks a lot like her, but definitely not her.
Yeah.
She's got some problems with this guy though. He's apparently into all sorts of get rich quick schemes, which caused some friction in their marriage. I take it, and but it's not the only problem, right? Like he's planning to go to the moon for 4 months. He ends up going to Mars for 2 years, and he thinks this is somehow going to improve his relationship with his family.
Well, the guy does look like he's a real dumb fuck. He doesn't know where his shirts are. He got into debt to Amway. A known scam to the tune of $3,000. Meanwhile, his wife is trying to raise chickens and doing victory gardens in the backyard so that she can feed the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But also he came into a world where he thought he could be a derrick worker and make six figures for a couple months work out of the year. Dangerous work, hard work, bad conditions away from your family, but still. And the world the carpet got pulled out from underneath his feet. I'm like,
mm-hmm.
I feel sorry for this guy, and it feels like a lot of the relationship troubles, like maybe his wife Rebecca Ferguson here wouldn't mind everything if he's earning that steady income and he's providing a roof over her head, but like he's not. That's the only thing he ever provided. It seems like, and he's not doing that.
Yeah.
So you can see where guys like this can really feel ill-used by society, even though it's really easy to look and be like, well, why didn't you apply yourself? Why didn't you go to college? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why don't you keep track of your shirts or learn how to use an iron or follow a court decree for a separation agreement? It's like but underlying it, like what do you do for guys like Miles?
Well, I'm curious what the show's gonna say about that, because it's interesting to me that the place he turns to find a solution for losing his oil job is the new energy jobs and the new mining jobs, right? Like all of this, he's going to Helios, the company that put him out of work in the first place, to apply for a new job. So I do wonder if the show is trying to say, well, yes, the old jobs may disappear and that's troublesome for the people with those jobs, but they can find new jobs in the new sectors that open up because of it.
I mean, it seems like we tell ourselves, right? It's like for every coal miner who's out of work, then that person can be wiring up solar panels in, probably a state that's thousands or hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from their family. So it's like, I mean, it's a good story, right? Like we're creating all these jobs are green jobs, but also like these jobs require higher levels of education and experience and training. And, if we're going to live in a country where it's like, we got to work to eat, we got to make sure we provide work for people like Miles, man. Like, not everyone can have a PhD in moon minology to put food on their family's table. And I'm always interested in like utopian stuff like that, where they like try to do the nitty gritty details of like, how does all this worker transition happen? What does that look like to the families involved? And I hope we get some good stories out of that.
When you pair that with the political and economic transformation of the Soviet Union, you start to see a picture that's like, the transition period is rough. Yes, you might be going towards some positive goals long term, and these might be good things for society at large, but there is a transition period in which people get kind of crushed under the weight of that. There's massive 100%. Inflation. People without the jobs to handle that, without the new jobs that pay the new money, are going to get lost somewhere. And Miles feels like one of those guys Miles feels like the success story. He's able to find the job to get to the next phase of his life, whereas I bet a lot of people are not. They're just lost.
But even that success story requires him to take this extremely risky job that's going to bring him out of his family for 2 years. And you look at the relationship that he's got with his elder daughter, which like seems like she's kind of getting old enough that she sees as her daddy's bullshit. The youngest one doesn't. He's still daddy, but like, she understands her mom and helps out enough to know that like, oh man, a lot of what's happening in her life that sucks is probably because dad's a little bit of a dummy. and now he's going to be gone out of her life for 2 years. She's going to go from like 13 to 15. Like that's you literally can't. I mean, I'm sure you'll get a boatload of money, but like you're never going to get that time back. You're never going to be able to be there for your daughter in these formative years, and that's rough. That's really rough.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know how you can compensate someone fairly for that.
That's the thing. I'm wondering what the salaries are like on this, on the Mars mission for 2 years. On one hand, you think there's a lot of hazard pay involved. But on the other hand, you look at the supply and demand issue and you say, people want to do this. People are itching to get out there. And there's so many people put out of jobs that have the same qualifications as Miles. Yeah. How many do you really need out on Mars? How many can you sustain out on Mars, you know?
Yeah, because it's still fucking Mars. Yeah. Fuck all to eat out there, you know?
Right. So
I'm not going to find the cabbage or potato asteroid.
Probably not. I don't know what's out there.
You can't eat platinum, last I checked, yeah.
But it makes me wonder if it's actually going to be as lucrative a gig as you would think.
Yeah, well, and that even goes like that's another way that like even in more like even in a more utopian, you know, better setting that like you can still have the haves and have-nots, because guys like Miles that do make it and they come back and they got like a $500,000 contract after 2 years, they're gonna have coins jingling in their pocket and they're gonna be like, I don't understand what people don't like about this country. It's like it's so, you know, it's American dream is still alive, and then the 10 guys that didn't make it and are still on the welfare rolls and their families are imploding and all that. It's like. Yeah, like it's always a bad time to be the ones left behind in an economy. And you should try to keep as few people from feeling that feeling as possible, because, boy, that tends to cause problems.
Oh, yeah.
People tend to blow up space centers when shit like that happens.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go over to a birthday party where Danielle's bringing out the cake. It's Danny's daughter's 9th birthday party.
Bad Danny.
Bad Danny,
good
yes.
Danny's bringing out the cake. Very confusing.
I know. Too many Dannys. So Danielle asks... that's why I'm calling Danny, the good Danny, Danielle throughout this entire thing.
Good call.
She asks Amber how she's doing, and she says she's all right, but, you know, it gets easier every day. And we see that Danielle is all smiles until she sees a picture of bad Danny. Did the astronauts murder Danny on Mars?
Man, Will talks about how that had a bad end. Like, I think Danny kills himself, is what I think.
Wow. I mean, it's got to be, right? He definitely didn't come back. He's not in the photo of the Mars astronauts returning. So there's no way he made it back.
Ooh, you're right. Even if he were convicted, like even if he was a person standing trial in like, you know, quasi-military corporate custody, he would still be in that picture, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I definitely, there'll be other pieces of this puzzle, but like this is a big one. But I also like, it's like goes back to like Danielle being like the best fucking person. Like we saw evidence last season that she, maybe more than anyone else, looked after Danny almost like, you know, she was his son. You know, her parent, you know, obviously she felt close to her father. You know, she was one of the Bobs, right? And this is like, you know, her brother's son. Like she's at least the big aunt, right? But like she's playing a mother-in-law role to Amber here. You know, she's really being there for her in an important way. And it's just like, man, I just Danielle's just the fucking best. What can you say?
Yeah, it feels to me like she's doing the Karen thing from last season when there was a crisis. Yeah. Karen went around and kind of brought everybody together like they would back in the 60s, right?
But that was like more of the great lady where it's like, you know, I'm the commander of the astronaut's wife. This is like, I'm your mom, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the difference in a Karen and a Danielle, you know?
Yeah, totally. And then Ed gets a message from Kelly, and she and Alexi's mother are taking care of her child, Alex. Kelly wants him to come home soon to get rid of this old biddy. She's apparently a lot to be around.
So the first time I watched this, I didn't pick up that this is literally Alexi's mother.
Yeah.
She got this badass babushka from Minsk. Just yeah, and you know how pissed she has to be summoned from Russia to take care of her idiot son who got off and you can just hear the speech she's got about him going off and getting killed, and this American girl, and you know,
she hates
she's
Ed.
having to take care. Yeah. She hates Ed because Ed's just off gallivanting while she's stuck down here dealing with all this stuff, and yeah, they really paint a picture. They really paint a picture.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to call this Kelly's mother-in-law, but I don't think they were ever married. I think he died sooner than that. So I just got to call
Martian
it Alex's
law?
grandmother.
By what Martian law were they not married? That's what
True.
That's
Martian common law. Yeah, they were definitely.
Yeah,
married.
they were Martian common law for sure.
You share a hab for more than 6 months, and you're married.
I think if you share genetic material, it's any quantity of genetic material shared. Common law Martian wife.
Here's where we start getting glimpses of the strained relationship here, and Ed's failing health too. Ed's having trouble with his hand. He looks down at it when he's getting this message from Kelly about coming home, which is important, and he's apparently supposed to be coming home in 2 months, which raises some tension later.
Yep. And the other thing is, we know from the previous scene with Grigori that he is still doing his Ed Baldwin thing, where as his capacity of executive officer on Mars, which is like the first officer, he's still rigging the system where he keeps coming up in all the choice pilot assignments. And like, should he be with his hand trimmer?
Very good question.
Like, later on when he takes manual control of those thrusters, I don't know, Ed. Don't know if you should be doing this, Ed.
Yeah, I want Data at that control, not Barkley.
But you know, like we also have seen from Molly, like how hard it is for these people who have had, you know, these high charging jobs and they're adrenaline junkies, how hard it is for them to give it up and to retool.
Oh yeah,
and Ed's no Molly. I'll tell you that much.
So the asteroid is hooked up via cables for the journey back to Mars. We get to see the whole process here. They're firing bolts into an asteroid. I found this fascinating. Like, how do you fire something into a planet where you have no gravity to hold you down? Well, you got to strap yourself in first, right?
Yep.
So why are you firing bolts when you obviously have the capacity to screw things in a way that can withstand the forces of the bolt being fired in? I don't know. That seemed weird to me, but...
There's a couple things seem weird to me. Like, I don't know whether they're trying to tell the story of these spikes being just literally in the ground 3 inches, or you're supposed to understand that they snapped off, but they don't look anywhere near long enough to do the job you're supposed to be doing here.
Agreed. Yeah.
I'm no asteroid
The whole thing
pusher.
Seems oddly fragile. Why use bolts in the first place? Why not just totally encircle the asteroid with a cable and hook it up back at the truss again?
Or why are we pushing instead of towing?
Yes.
Because, like, first of all, I'm like, well, won't this cause a bunch of debris that strikes the aircraft? And I looked it up, and I'm like, I'm currently NASA's most powerful ion engine produces 5 newtons of thrust, which I don't know. You know how much that is?
It's like 2.5 air books.
Yeah, it's essentially that allows you to move 5 kilograms per second and accelerate them per each time. That's the energy required to accelerate a kilogram, 1 meter per second. Okay, so that's like
wow.
10 pounds.
5
10
kilograms. That's it.
Comparing to the F1 engines on the Saturn V that could make 33 million newtons. Ion thrusters are not very, very powerful. Now, obviously, these are big-ass honking ion thrusters, but their whole shtick is they're very low power, but they just never run out of fuel. So it's slight, consistent thrust. Mm-hmm. So, okay, they're not going that fast. So the shit falling off the asteroid, and they show it. It goes by at like the pace of snow driving, you know, when you're going down the highway. Not even that fast. It's kind of like drifting past. But still, why wouldn't you just cover the whole thing in like mesh and then tow it behind you?
Is it are there worries about deceleration? Like when you get to your destination, you're going so fast that the deceleration might be a problem at that point, and it's better to have the problems early if you're going to have them.
But you're going to have problems of like the deceleration problems you're going to have on the acceleration side and vice versa. It's like it did nothing. The only thing I can think of is like you would impede your thrust if you are towing something by definition.
Yeah, you're hitting the rock with your thrust, and it's.
But it looked like those ion thrusters were canted out about 30 degrees anyway, which this ship looked like it was designed to tow this asteroid. I have no idea. Like,
that's what I initially assumed when I first saw the rig. I was like, "Oh, the spaceship goes that way," and then the spaceship went that way, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah. I have no idea. Like nothing jumped out like the crazy garden hose, fire hose, snake cables from last season. But I was side-eyeing the setup the entire time.
The cables, so the cables look really wonky, right? Like they look like they're zigzagging across the surface of this thing, like some spaz put them down there. But like,
it's like just walk out a random distance and throw your throw your thing in there.
But I think what's happening there is you're seeing it from an angle and there's elevation differences between the things, so it looks like it's zigzag. But if you looked at it from directly above, it would all be perfectly in line. I don't know. It all just seems. It all seems a little weird, but look, I'm no astrophysicist. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons. I'm sure they consulted with people on this. So
yeah, it seems like this. It's also just a lot easier to cut a cable than it is to do whatever the hell they had to do to. And also, we'll wait till we get to the disaster part. Won't have to wait long.
Yeah, it's coming up here in a second.
They did have we did have this discussion between the asteroid workers.
Yeah,
you have one that looks like Cousin Mary from Downton Abbey talking to this redheaded guy, and you can see again the effects of the profit motive at work here. That this is not about the science. This is not about the first. Everybody else is talking about that. They're talking about their paychecks and their bonuses and whether, if they have to do a safety delay, that takes money out of their pockets. That's
these things are at odds, right? Safety and speed.
Yes. It won't be the last time we talked about frictions of budgets. This episode.
So let's go back to MCSC, where Aleda's son is visiting to see the big mission, though he's not very interested. And Administrator Hobson comes up and tells her about his first time that his father took him to his job, even though he didn't appreciate it at the time. It eventually felt worthwhile. It stuck with him. He thinks the same will happen with her son.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't want to like Marv, but I'm finding myself liking Marv. Like, this feels fake as fuck. Like, this is so corny. Like, you went to your dad's factory and you got... But, like, the way... By the time you got done with the speech, I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel proud of your old man and your town for making cars or whatever the hell you're making. He's got that that politician thing,
Yeah.
Like the gifted politician, where it's like they can say corny shit and you believe it.
Sure, I suppose
he's good at schmoozing.
It's hard for me to get the Daniel Stern of this out of the picture, though. I will admit I'm having a little trouble taking Daniel Stern seriously, and I know he's had serious roles in the past, and I've seen some, and he's not bad in them. It's just.
Those aren't the roles you think of.
No, he's more known for Home Alone and stupid like Boy Scout movies, the comedy shit like from the 90s. I don't know. I'll be fine. I just need a couple episodes to acclimate.
I'll never be fine. He was going to be. I'm dead serious. He's going to be. I think he actually is on. This is all an elaborate backstory. He's on the run for trying to kidnap a child on 2 separate occasions. And it will never not, if he shows up in any kind of bandaging or injured at all in this show, it's never going to not be funny. I don't care if the Molly Cobb Space Center gets blown up again and he's got his face wrapped up and his arm in a sling. It's like I will never believe it was suffered as a result of the bombing. I was thinking, well, Kevin came to town and he had to have another crack at that safe. That's all there's to it.
Got taught a lesson again by a child. Yeah, he better stay away from Aleda's kid. Who knows what bad things will happen to him.
This kid looks like he's a little too old for Home Alone type shenanigans, but I don't know. Does he own a BB gun? Does he have access to a bowling ball? You never know. Here's the thing: is like there is nothing in this sequence that makes me think Aleda is anything less than a trusted, respected, long-term employee of NASA. There's no hint of interaction that she is on the outs with anybody. Like everything is still cool, which just makes me think that this thrust thing is not a career flameout. It's but I don't know. That's the evidence I'm putting in that. Yeah, I'm putting in that pile.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It all feels very natural, and that's strange. So also, all the cables.
To defend Aleda's kid, there's nothing the exciting happening just yet. Like I'd be on my phone too, and I'm the biggest NASA nerd. And like it's like there's a bunch of boring shit that happens before the historic stuff happens. So yeah, let the kid off. Let him play Clash of Kings or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. All the cables are secured, so they fire up the engines to begin the transport mission, and everything seems to be going well. We kind of talked about a lot of this stuff, and it's about to get exciting here in a second. So let's go over to Miles arriving at Helios for his interview. And there are tons of applicants. During the interview, he lies about his education, but it seems to work out for him because they say, well, there's a slot for you on the moon in 2 years. And he says, look, I can't wait 2 years. My family's going to shit, and asks if there's anything sooner. And they apparently have a slot available on Mars immediately if he's willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you're truly desperate, we have the Truly Desperate Men's program where we risk your lives 70% more, and you're gone 300% longer from your family. But you get a 20% bonus.
Yeah.
Or look at Mr. Moneybags over here.
Say?
Look at the fucking communists giving the workers 40% when they'll take 20 and you know it.
They will. That's the supply and demand thing I was talking about. With so many applicants ready to go at the drop of a hat, I feel like the hazard pay is not going to be what you'd want it to be. You're going to have people saying, like I'll do that. I can.
Who will pay you to go, you know?
Exactly, yeah. I will go to Mars for $20 in a candy bar. No problem. But I don't know. They don't seem to be telling that story because he takes the job. I'm sure he's aware of what the salary is at that point.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is. Like, that's the thing. It's like these dangerous jobs, you know, when you're out in the North Sea on an oil platform, or you're up in the Alberta oil shale sands or whatever. Like they're hard, brutal jobs, and they pay well, man. They do pay well, especially when you compare it to everything else in the surrounding economy. I don't think they're paid for what they're worth in terms of like what they do psychologically and physically to you, but they're paid pretty well. They're paid pretty well. So I imagine like I wouldn't be surprised if this guy gets $500,000 for a 2-year tour in Mars, which you know is life-changing money and for this family. I have no doubt. Imagine
all the Amway he can buy with that $500,000.
That's the thing. It's like, we were undercapitalized, honey. We need to come back when you buy them. Yeah. Oh my God.
Fill that garage with Amway.
Well, that's the ultimate tragedy about a lot of these people that, like, you know, I've read a lot of stories about guys who got rich in, like, you know, North Dakota, quote unquote, right? But like the whole fools in their money. You give a 23-year-old, you know, $80,000 for working 3 months. Guess what he's going to do with it? He's going to fucking blow every cent of it before. And not everybody. Some of them, you know, invest in houses and their education and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, you know, the average stripper trajectory and oil rig derrick worker trajectory, I imagine, are pretty similar, and that it's got a sad end once your physical abilities no longer can carry you. If you haven't thought ahead, and most of them don't seem to.
I think he's gonna come back from Mars and do like the gang does in Always Sunny, and he's just gonna buy a bunch of gasoline and store it in that garage, and then when he can't sell, he's gonna complain. Just, you know, there was a downturn in the gasoline market. Who could have foreseen it?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, we're all in fusion now, so maybe other people could have seen it, Miles. But you know, Dennis made a good pitch.
Sure did. Who's the wild card? I think Miles is the wild card.
Miles is the wild card, yeah, of this season.
So let's go back up to the asteroid where the in the middle here of the transport mission. I don't know how far along they are. I don't know how close to Mars they are. I wish I would have got some context here. The cables start coming loose and the ship starts wobbling. Ed tries to manually correct.
Space's greatest monsters.
Yeah, they're terrifying. I wouldn't want to face a cable in space. And yet they also are life-giving. You know, what's strapping you to the side of that spaceship if not a cable?
It's cable. It's like being a sailor. You got to love the thing trying to kill you.
Ed tries to manually correct this wobble, but it doesn't work. And Grigori decides to go back out to the asteroid to retension the cables. Parker, the guy who really wants his bonus, goes with him. And he's killed when the truss breaks apart. And Grigori's leg is stuck. And he's leaking O2. And Ed starts the emergency disconnect procedure, saying, I'm going out to get him. But it's too late. So he jettisons the asteroid with the dying Grigori on it. And we're right back in it, man. This show, like, of all the things I said, you know, at the beginning, how this show is just a lot of setup for this first episode, this is an exciting bit here. Like, this show does this space danger tension so well.
And it works because I don't think it's schmuck bait. Like, I certainly knew my son believed it. Like, he should have seen his eyes was big as dinner plates. He was gulping fish fish like a landed dock. He's gulping air like a fish on a like landed on a dock and clearly worried. And I'm like, I want to say like, no, man, look, but I'm like, you know what? I don't think I can. First off, you're 17. You're ready to deal with some death and disappointment. Second, yeah, they might kill Ed here, man. I'm worried too. Especially when he's like, fuck it. I got to go out there and save my buddy. I'm like, oh my God, the whole old generation is getting wiped out.
Yep.
We talked about the trimmer. The other interesting piece of liability is that the Martian commander, who, what a great idea to have a commander on Mars that can actually have like almost real-time communication with these guys rather than waiting the long light distance. Or presumably he's got control of the situation, and all of the boots on the ground, so to speak, roundly ignore his advice to shut this down, to separate and figure it out later. And you got to wonder, like, why is for Grigori and Ed's perspective, they both agree it's like, what are we going to do if we don't do now? Like, why are they so gripped up at the timetable? Is this a Helios thing where they're like, these former cosmonauts are now like serving a profit motive? Are they sweating efficiency and money over lives? Because it certainly fucking feels like it.
So there are several contexts I wish I had more of here, but one of them is the state of Happy Valley in the astronauts' minds. Like, the actual astronauts, not just the private contractors. Are
like
they
Happy Valley
aware?
Needs this?
Yeah, are they aware of the strife back home? Like, the president wants to shut them down if they can't get their shit together in a certain amount of time, and if they lose this asteroid, this could be the end of Happy Valley. Because Ed would 100% want to salvage this if that's the case. If he knows about that, because he doesn't want to go back to Earth.
You know, from Will's conversation with Danielle at the end of the episode, that like that's an effective piece of pressure to put on somebody. To like, with all this stuff that happened with Danny and your wife and Danny's kid, and boy, it'd be a shame for all those sacrifices to mean nothing ultimately because we couldn't retention a goddamn cable. Isn't that? Yeah. But it still goes back to the economics. Because
yeah, totally. I mean, the back on Earth, right? Like the political economics here, where we don't want to spend this much money on NASA if we're not seeing some return.
The fact that we're already this Martian base is already profitable, but if it doesn't be even more profitable, then we would. I mean, there's the implicit understanding that they would rather kill. Like, if they had an unblemished last 8 year safety record on Mars, I guarantee to people in boardrooms being like, we could kill an astronaut or two and save a couple $1 billion. Like, in the grand scheme of things, that would be better, right? And it just feels like that is, after Margo was swept aside, like, that was the last person saying no to some of this shit. And now there's nobody. Even Ed's working for a company. He's not working for NASA.
Yeah,
it's
then
sad.
the guy at the head of NASA, the administrator, is from corporate America. I mean, he he's the guy who turned Chrysler around, right? So he's coming in and making cuts to programs that are over budget and maybe because of safety issues and things like that. So,
well, and it's all wild that like because like Ed, he's always line is like, you never want people making these decisions on Gono and having people astronauts' lives in their hands that the asses weren't on the line. Well, the people whose asses are on the line are making the calls and are making bad, stupid calls. It seems like to me. So it's like, it's just some of these ironies that you see play out over the years, I think, are interesting.
I'm curious how much of this is actually Ed's fault, because Ed's got this this trimmer in his hand that...
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When Ed takes the stick, I'm like, fuck yes, this is the Riker move. Grab manual control and go. And in previous seasons, he would have nailed this. I think he controls this wobble. He makes everything cool. They go out there, they retension the cables, everything's good. When his hands are shaking, he's unable to do that. And being Ed, he's unable to say, my hands aren't up to this. Here, co-pilot, take this,
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this is Ed's fault directly. And that's kind of what the thing is about at the end, where he's just staring out the window thinking about what he's done here.
It's a little kind of like kind of like not quite as bad as Danny, but also like you just condemned the guy for putting people at risk, and because you couldn't. No, there's a lot of interesting things they're doing with that, and I think it might be a little strong to say it's all Ed's fault, because like we're talking about like he's Ed Baldwin at 85%, which is still probably better than the vast majority of people in that position. Mm-hmm. But still, like, Ed's used to having 100% of Ed Baldwin, and maybe even in times of crisis 110% of Ed Baldwin, and he doesn't have that to tap on anymore. And you're right, it's probably not the reason but Ed should have, as the XO, known his capabilities and known his crew's capabilities, and ultimately it's on him. And what's interesting is it seems like the Martian commander is the one that's actually going to take the fall.
Yeah, Peters. That's like
the guy who is saying we shouldn't, but like that's kind of funny that again, we haven't had the whole report on this latest crisis, right? But it's interesting that the guy making the call at NASA is like wanting to replace the guy who was more out, like his abundance of caution would have saved lives.
Yeah.
But that's the guy that's on the chopping block.
Which is interesting that you're replacing him with Danielle Poole, who is also like that too, right? Like she would have made that same call.
Are they trying to borrow her reputation of being a careful, considered, measured commander and then try to apply the screws and the pressure that they do to everybody to keep it going? It's like, well, it's a shame if this colony would fail. It'd be a shame. I don't know, because like, it seems like Danielle has like maybe the last completely platinum plated reputation they have at NASA.
Seems like it, yeah.
Do they want her because of that reputation, or they want a reputation and they want a less platinum plated Danielle? I think Marv, as much as I think Marv is a good guy, he's also a guy who puts the profits ahead of the lives, it seems like to me.
Or at least gives them equal weight.
Yeah,
he's trying to walk a line that doesn't need to be walked.
And profit beats ties too.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out. The thing about this mission is I can't believe that they don't just immediately look at the situation and start the emergency procedures. When that first cable comes loose, that's a catastrophic mission failure. And I know, I laid out all the reasons that Ed might want to continue, but everybody in that ship can see that cable come loose. Mm-hmm. That's game over, man. There's no retensioning anything. You got to replace the bolts, but the cables are not slack, so like, there's no way to fix
Here's
that.
the other thing I don't understand is it seemed like this entire crisis could have been averted just by stopping the gas. Now
they do at some point.
It could be, and I had time to research that an ion engine is like a nuclear reactor, and that like once you start it, it's a big fucking thing to stop it, and you can't restart. If you scram a nuclear reactor, you can't just be like, oh fuck, we shouldn't have done that. Turn the key, start it back up. No, you got to be probably dragged back to port and like spend several years getting your shit fixed. And I even seem to think that like maybe that is like some kind of unstoppable reaction that you have to like, like I don't know. And there's also the idea that like they didn't have enough RCS, as those reaction control thrusters, propellant. That was the Martian guy worried about, like, if they go under 20%, RCS threshold, then they're like, because that's like you've got no way to control your steering in space.
Sure.
So, but yeah, like I felt like the way to stop this would just be literally to stop, because then it's like, well, you're just drifting with an asteroid at very low relative velocity. You got all the time in the world to fix those tensions. Like I don't think they did a very good job of explaining the exact technical situation that made this into a true crisis. So they didn't have all the wavy cables and all that stuff that was ridiculous last year. But like, I feel like they cheated by doing an unusual scenario and then doing no explanation whatsoever for us, the viewers, so we could kind of like critique the decisions made.
Sure. Yeah. And well, I think the important thing they're trying to get at here is Ed, right? I mean, Ed's attitude, Ed's physical condition, all of that. And
it's not just Ed; it was Gregory wanted to too. Like he wanted. These guys are, and they've always been invested in making these missions work. When it's like, well, if you can't stop here because we'll all die in space. But like the option of stopping here seems like it was always on the table, but none of the guys wanted to do it. And from the workers on up to the guys calling the shots.
Yeah, that's interesting from Grigori. Let's go back to NASA. We're kind of you see all of this play out in space here at the asteroid, and then when you go back to Earth, you kind of rewind a little bit because of the delay. Which I thought was interesting. So Aleda's having this panic attack while the crisis is sort of ongoing, and she has to abandon her station. Not a good look. Everybody's calling her name, Aleda. Where are you going? That's
the thing. That's
rough.
Her sneaking away after lunch on Friday, like everyone, including the flight director, is not only noticing her leaving, be like, "What the fuck? Where are you going?
We need you. There's an active crisis happening." Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like the way they told this story, it's like, of course this is happening. But also like Aleda doesn't have the best experience with mental health. She's kind of got a shaky foundation there to begin with. And it's just like, I just felt so bad because as soon as I saw her, I immediately understood what was going to happen. And like, this is essentially an involuntary control. It'd be like whacking someone's knee with a hammer and getting mad that they kicked you. Like your brain is just going to like take control and be like, yeah, fuck out, your body's going to take control of your brain, and there's just, it's like criticizing someone for not being able to lift something too heavy for them. It's like she just reached her limit, but it's going to have probably pretty severe career repercussions for her.
Oh yeah, and you follow it on with the stuff that happens the next day where NASA's trying to call her and she's not answering, and that's not good. And I will say, like, too, Margo's death stuff, right? I mean, we get a lot of flashbacks here to the traumatic bombing experience. Margo's dead.
The sirens going off. The corridors being filled with smoke. The people, hurt. And I'm extremely sympathetic. But it's also one of those things where it's like, if your job is to lift heavy objects and you can't do it, then you probably shouldn't have that job. Like if you are prone to, if you found out, like, if you're prone to like having seizures, like maybe you won't be able to drive because it doesn't protect you or others to put you out on the road. I do wonder if like Aleda is she going to be able to hide this? Because it seems clear from like inferences in the trailer and all stuff we talked about in the preview that like she's going to transition to Helios. And I wonder, is Helios take her with this knowledge, or is this something that like kind of gets swept under the rug, that she is going through active trauma and it can interfere with her ability to manage a crisis? I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is, we used to have a confidant for her, right? And Bill, he used to be the guy that she could talk to, and he could like press her on these things, but she doesn't have that person in her life now. So I think my guess is what she's going to try and do is just play this off like, actually, I have no idea how I would excuse that, because that's a wild breach of protocol. But like,
I don't know how you can.
I don't think she's going to tell him the real reason that she was having a panic attack, and so they're just going to fire her for other reasons, and then she's going to
say she had gas. She had
I don't know. Yeah, I
So
had a
she's
bad
up late
steak.
at night with her kids, flu. Like
Yeah,
because
a
I'm
family emergency,
wondering,
but like, what's more important than this in the moment?
I'm wondering if she gets fired and Bill hears about it from Helios and he assumes it's Aleda being Aleda in terms of like your button heads
Yeah,
of
yeah.
management, and it's like, well, where we appreciate go-getters and chargers over here at Helios, and he's going to recruit her, not knowing that she's like kind of like this liability if she doesn't get her shit figured out.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna know.
I don't know.
I do wonder what would drive her to take another position in roughly the same job. Like,
It's got to be NASA firing her.
no, I mean personally, why would she accept another position that would trigger her PTSD in this way?
Oh,
Maybe it's more removed. Maybe it's not something as direct as like thrust control.
And people make all kinds of selfish decisions, like to continue
Yeah.
going. Like, look at Ed. Like, these
Sure.
decisions that him and Grigori are making are fundamentally, at some level, selfish decisions, right?
Oh, yeah.
People do that. Like, hell, I do it. Everyone does it. You listen to podcasts have done it.
Except
They don't
you.
have to,
You're
we can't
cool.
all be Danielle. We can't all be Danielle, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Danielle is the Mrs. Rogers of space, and as far as I can tell, she literally does no wrong. But she's the exception.
All right, let's go over back to Avery's birthday party. Danielle's called inside to see the news report of the mission failure and Grigori's death. She takes it pretty hard, as we'll see later.
Do you think it's like we're talking about, we've been paying attention to like the class and economic divides. I couldn't help but notice the way this is being reported is like the hero of Mars and great man has died, and also one other guy. Like, in every single time, it's like the hero of the Soviet Union, Grigory Kuznetsov, and some other dude. Like, do you think that there's going to be like a little bit of, when we go catch up to Cousin Mary from Downton Abbey and these other people, there's going to be a little bit of ruffles feathered. It's like, they only care when one of the NASA guys or one of the cosmonauts die. We're just grist for the mill, man.
Maybe.
Because that's how it would be reported. It wouldn't be reported of, Grigory Kuznetsov and also Parker, blah, 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 from Minnesota. It'd be like, hero of the Soviet Union and other minor dies. And it's like, if you're those minors, that's got to hit you a little funny.
Yeah, this is what I mean when I say I want more context within what's going on in Happy Valley, because I think we're going to get it, too. I think, this is just a stuffed
100%.
full episode, but episode 2, probably going to get into a lot more of that stuff.
Yeah, we're going to see all these conversations happen. It's just,
Yeah.
I can't help but speculate.
You're right. Let's go over to Margo seeing the news, and she tries to get hold of Director Katish, but she is not returning her calls. So she gets on a bus, looking determined, but I would say uneasy as well.
Yep. She's gonna go Margo this situation.
Yeah, this is the thing. I don't think her style of getting things done is gonna mesh well with the Soviet system, but maybe Glasnost will help her out. I don't know.
Maybe, but I'm the same way to her. Kind of ball busting style. Like, I feel like the Soviet era government is designed with many layers of padding between the citizen's foot and their sensitive crotches, and I just don't think her ball busting approach is gonna work in that environment.
Yeah,
they will blandly say no to her face until the heat death of the universe. But I don't know. Maybe something like this is something that she needs to get leverage.
Well, it's a really good setup for the end of this episode where she gets approached by someone outside of the official channels, and she's been stymied at every turn officially. This is her opportunity to break out of that pattern.
Yeah,
so, I think it's interesting.
And I know we've commented on it, but this scene particularly, her accent is hilarious because like you can really hear it when she just busts out of nowhere, like her regular unaccented English.
Yeah, to say her name,
and it's like you can hear that continue on into this. Yeah, it's just really funny. Like I've never heard Russian spoke with a thick Southern accent, and
I assume it's all intentional.
It's very funny
that the actor is actually doing this, knowing that it's bad, knowing that Margo would have a terrible Russian accent, and it would be tinged with Texas.
She just wants, she wants to be understood, and I bet her grammar is very good.
Yes.
It's just she has no desire to like want to pass as a native. In fact, maybe like the opposite. There's a little bit of like, I want people to know that I'm a Texas gal and I got shanghaied by Moscow here.
We'll see. So let's go back to Miles, who tucks his kids into bed, and then he and his wife talk about him going to Mars. She's worried about him after the asteroid mission failure and doesn't want him to go, but he promises it'll be okay. And then they get it on, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're back together. Do you think this guy makes it to the next season?
Oh, man.
They're really setting him up to be like the face of the class tension up there on Mars. I don't know if that's going to be done by the end of this season.
The lady who looks like Cousin Mary from Downton Abbey, I think, is another one that's putting her hat into that ring. But obviously, they're gonna definitely put him in a life or death situation because he's got this attractive, cute family that is like they're all kind of hanging on him, and like you even got the idea from here that his wife wouldn't mind them getting back together if things could, if he could provide for the family and get his act together, and there are real stakes, and it's pretty simple archetypal stuff that she just kind of like, but I don't know if they have to kill him, but they're definitely going to put him in a hell of danger.
I think at least this season he'll be the Ben Affleck, not the Bruce Willis. That's my assumption, because I think this class thing is going to last a lot longer than one season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll last into the 23rd century if The Expanse has anything to say about it.
Oh, it's yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Do you think Ed's going to sacrifice himself to save, like symbolically redeem Danny?
Okay.
The corrupt with the astronaut that had left the family, and here's a guy who's an innocent that didn't deserve any of this, and like Danny, also a kind of a dumb fuck, and a little bit of a sheep that could be losing his way this way or that.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm really not sure what they're doing with this guy yet, other than obvious class issues.
Let me ask you this: percentage of chance of Ed dying this season. From 0
I think it's
to 100%.
way up. I think it's almost
way
100.
Up.
Yeah. After seeing his attitude, especially that last shot, I mean, after seeing where he is currently, and he essentially has a death wish. He's wanting to stay on Mars until he dies. That's the story that I've been told. And death on Mars seems like it would come a lot quicker than death on Earth.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. But also, like, I really like the idea of a 5-season run of For All Mankind where it's like Ed is the bookend. He's like really old man Ed. And in the final season, like no longer in space, now running NASA. I did, speaking of his physical health, I did wonder if they're playing with the idea of him wondering if he could survive on Earth. If the last 20 years of his life have been spent in either 0G, 1/10 G, or 1/3 Earth gravity, or what does it look like for a man of his age to go back to Earth? And he hasn't been. True. He's been gone, as far as I know, for the last 8 years. I wonder if he's physically strong enough. With the arm hand trimmers aside, is he physically strong enough to do this work?
Yeah, It's an interesting question. I hadn't considered the very low G on Mars. I wonder if they have some kind of regimen where they put people up in orbit
and give
them some gravity for extended periods.
Well, I mean, the helios did spin. They did have a little bit. It wasn't full Earth gravity, I didn't think. Yeah, maybe they do. They do have a way, but like if he's on Happy Valley, that's a 3rd Earth gravity, and I think that'd be significant in terms of muscle loss and bone density and just your organs adapted. We still don't know. We still have no idea what like a decade of that would do to a person's life. Because no one's ever undergone it before.
Because I was thinking maybe Earth is his only hope. If he can get back to Earth, get some good health care, take it easy and not stress himself, maybe he could live to the next season for another decade or so. But it doesn't seem like he wants to do that. And he might not be able to survive that well if he gets to Earth, like you're saying. So, I don't know, man. It's not looking good for him, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. You're like 80%?
Yeah.
Death
yeah,
odds?
I might be higher.
I think I'm 50.
Okay.
I think I'm at 50, but I thought that was high. But
yeah, we'll see. All right, Margo goes to Star City, where she's told that the director is not available and that she has nothing to offer the Soviet space program anymore. And he thanks her for coming and tells her not to return unannounced again.
First of all, I love this mosaic. Holy shit. That's what a quality mosaic that's here at the Space Center, Star City.
I was so focused on the statue of what I think is Grigori that I missed the mosaic.
Oh man, there's this beautiful mosaic of an astronaut behind that's the backdrop of this entire meeting. But Margo looks pretty weak here. She's got a scheduled meeting in 9 days. She comes to deal with the crisis. The guy, there's also like, this isn't the first time I don't think they've talked. And he starts a conversation with a position of strength, and where she's like, "Oh, you speak English?" He's like, "Yeah, I also speak German and French and Italian too. Would you like to see my credentials?" Essentially like, I speak 5 languages. I'm an impressive person. And Margo ends the conversation when he's like, "You have been out of NASA for 10 years. All the technology you were current with back in the day is obsolete. What could you do that could provide better for the crisis?" And she goes, "Well, in your case, just about everything." That's an extremely weak answer to give someone who's already established himself as a very, academically formidable person. And
yeah, it's a personal attack when that's not at issue.
Yeah, and he's like, obviously he's being professionally rude and dismissive, but like, and she's like, "I was promised I'd be consulted on space matters." Boy, that's you're learning the value of a deal that you make under duress to a foreign government. It's like, well, you are consulted. We meet with you every 90 days, and you consult with us. We didn't say that we would implement your ideas or even listen to you, but you're being consulted. Like, I don't know. Margo, once again, is doing the wrong thing with a whole head of steam behind it. It seems like to me.
Yeah, I'm curious because this is all predicated on the death of Grigori, right? This is the impetus for her even making all these phone calls to try and get in touch. What is she hoping to get out of this meeting?
I think she's hoping that they'll be desperate enough to, because she just like intellectually clearly is going to cede here. She is, and I understand.
So she wants to get in there and solve problems for them, like help with the crisis. Okay,
the way me and Sergei used to solve these problems together, the spirit of cooperation. I want to get that going again, and she's just playing the wrong. She's got a bad hand and she's playing it poorly. But I understand her frustration. I understand her frustration, and I think the Russians are being punitive and a dick, and it's probably a lot of this Katish woman. But you still got to play a shitty hand to best of your ability, or why are you playing it all?
Yeah, well, we'll see her play an even shittier hand here in a second.
I bet she gets another card, and it's not the one you want to see from the flop, the river, or the roast.
It's got too many numbers on it. So Ed sends Kelly a message about the asteroid mission. There's going to be a new commander coming up, and he's decided to stay until they arrive to smooth the transition. And when she tells Alex, Kelly gets an earful about Ed from Alex's grandmother.
I thought they played this really great because Kelly understands. She's NASA, and your dad's probably been trying to dodge Earth duty, sure, but also he's the XO. This is a major fatality accident. He probably doesn't even have to make the phone call for her to understand this.
This is a perfect cover for Ed. Ed wants to stay up personally, but this is the perfect cover where he doesn't have to say, "I just want to stay up here."
And Kelly can see like her doing the math, but also this sucks for her because she clearly doesn't like Alexi's mom. Alexi's mom doesn't like her. And yeah, it's gonna be, it's like Ed gonna die in space, like the babushka here says, like this man's not coming back. He's gonna die in space.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Kelly understands in the back of her mind, gee, if Grigori hadn't died, would he be making some other excuse? You know,
Right. I think so.
The efficiency on that last asteroid was not good, Kel. Gonna have to, got to get these numbers up.
Yep.
And I'm the XO. Yeah,
They're going to shut down the program if we don't get this mission going, and I'm the XO. Yeah, the way he reacts to her first message earlier in the episode, with barely a smile. Like, this is a cute moment, right? Like, the kids put up this welcome home Poppy picture or collage, and he's just looking at it with barely even a smile on his face. And he's looking at his hand, and he's going, I'm not coming back. I can't tell them, but I'm not coming back.
Yeah. And see, that's what that made me kind of think of the I'm scared of going back to Earth gravity in the first place because I've so deteriorated, weakened.
Sure.
Because before his arm like let him down in a mission, he was still kind of like, oh God. So it's like that's why I was connected in my mind. But and then the other thing is like the grandma sit there and says like, well, he said he was going to come back in 98 and in 01 and then like this isn't the first time he's supposed to come home, welcome home Poppy situation, and he's aborted.
Yeah.
Which gives credence to the babushka here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 2 lingering questions this episode. Did the astronauts actually murder Danny in space? And number 2, what the hell does Kelly do now? They don't broach her life at all in this episode. It seems like she's staying home taking care of this kid, but then why does Olga need to be there? Why call in the babushka from the Soviet Union to help out?
Look, as a single dad that did most of it without my parents being around to help me, that is a huge fucking issue. And she's got, her mom's dead. Alexi's dead. Apparently they got her mom from Minsk. That's a lot to do, to like raise to have a whole household going, and you're it, and you've got a grandma helping out. Like, I wondered, like, does Kelly feel a little resentful that like her life was put on hold in a way that maybe she didn't expect? Could
be.
Is she cool
that was
being
one of
an
the
astronaut?
It was one of the questions we had in the preview podcast. Like, what is Kelly going to be doing now? She seemed very driven to study life. She was this driven biologist.
She's going to get back in the game,
went up to Mars. Yeah, what's she going to do now? And it seems like the answer is nothing.
Being a mom.
I mean, not to denigrate, single moms. It's a very hard job. It takes all your time. But
is that what she wanted for herself?
She's doing nothing. Yeah,
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where Kelly sits yet. They don't even talk about it, though, so I imagine there could be something going on in the background. Maybe she is working on a project to fulfill her
I hope they come up with something,
needs,
because I could really easily seeing her just being like Adrian from Rocky, where she's just a wet fucking blanket,
Yeah.
You got Ed out there trying to do something awesome. When you coming home, Rocka? You're going to get yourself killed out there. You got no chance. You got, like, get the fuck. Nah, that's...
Yeah.
That shit was old in the 80s, man. Like... Yeah, I think they will, but it is, we don't know anything about her other than, she's a widow and she's a mom and she doesn't like her mother-in-law.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing
Martian mother-in-law.
Let's go back to the Molly Cobb Space Center, where Danielle goes in to meet with NASA Administrator Hobson, Marv, as you call him. He asks her to be the new commander of Happy Valley to get things back on track. She doesn't want to do it, but Eli Hobson tells her that Grigori's death will be in vain if they can't salvage the program.
I like how they do some subtle world building here, too. The fact that the Russians and Americans take turns on who gets to be the commander, and Danielle being like, I thought it was the Russians' turn. It's like, well, it's a midterm appointment, so they're, instead of trying to grab something that's not theirs, that goes to like the cooperation.
It's like the Klingons and the Federation sharing a mining colony once every 3 months or 3 years. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, on Strange New Worlds. But like, no one's trying to jump ahead in the queue or trying to, oh, it's a weakness in the Americans. We can take over now.
I wonder how long the term is too. Is it 4 years, like a presidential term? Is it 6 years?
It can't be like 6 weeks. That's not long enough to get anything done. But no, I do wonder how long the term is too. But like, they also tell us that the Martian commander is getting thrown under the bus. It seems like in the early goings of the investigation, he's being replaced. They want to put Danielle up there, and her being antagonistic to him because he's the hatchet man that slashed 20% of NASA's budget. But then he came back with when I took over 60% of our budgets were our projects are over budget and over time. And it's like, there is tension in getting things done and doing things in a safe and reasonable way. Like, if you only did things that were safe and reasonable, you by definition never do anything new, right? Mm-hmm. But like, it's always like, where should that balance point be?
Yeah.
And it feels like they're telling a story in the last 8 years. It's gone way from like the well-run government program to like, there's definitely been cuts. 20%. How much of those impacted astronaut safety and things like that. It's cool to see them set these kind of like battles up and wallpaper them initially with essentially patriotism and, wanting to do to finish the job to see out the job that you started.
Sure. Yeah. And personally, to have your friends' deaths mean something, and yeah, a lot mixed up in that.
And here's the other evidence we get of of like what happened to Danny, where she said, Kuz was my rock in all this. Like, Ed completely fell apart after what happened to Karen, and she's here to show respect to her friend Kuz, who he's the same guy that she shook hands with against both of their nations' will. So like their relationship goes back 3 seasons now. Mm-hmm. And, they wrestled for first boot on Mars. They wrestled the North Korean for first gun on Mars. Like, like a lot of history.
Yeah, totally. He was a big deal in her life. And
that's
so
what
was
makes
Danny.
All this play. Yep.
The bad Danny. And you get the impression here that a lot of the reason she doesn't want to be involved in any more NASA shit is because of what happened with Danny.
It's bad memories. Like, Happy Valley is a bad memory for her. A lot of people she loved died, and and whatever happened to Danny thing was crazy enough that it left a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
And I like how they're juxtaposing the two deaths, right? Like, Danny's death is keeping her from wanting to do this, and Grigori's death is pushing her toward it. There's some nice symmetry there, that her personal life is pulling her in two directions.
Yeah. And you can also see how this effective appeal, like, the president called me to serve. How could I say no? Now the president's servant is calling me. It's like, most of us don't get those calls in life. If the president of the United States needs you for your special qualifications and experience, like, right? Like, that's...
Miles got the call. Bruce Willis got the call.
Yep. But it's like, that's got to be a lot of pressure,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to know what the phrase "a red ass hair away from canceling the program" means. What is it about a red ass hair? Is it finer than like a brown ass hair?
You should have worked with my uncles in some of the contracting jobs, because there is a finely graded... You think the imperial system is complicated. Wait till you see the hair-based... There is the ass hair, the red modifier. You got ass hair, cunt hair.
Oh,
frog's hair.
Finer.
Oh, way finer. Okay. And then a frog's hair is the finest of the hair. And you can modify any of those by making them red or curly,
Is that because it's actually invisible? Like, a frog's hair is actually invisible?
Yeah, they have no hair. So if a frog has hair, it's so fucking fine.
Right.
If you're cutting something fine as frog's hair, that's as fine as you can get. But yeah, red ass hair is a medium grade hair thickness.
Yeah. Call me when it's a frog's
Yeah.
ass hair away. Then we'll talk.
A ginger frog's ass hair. That's as close to midnight as you can get, I think.
Seems like it. I like that they've run everything through X-ray machines now after the bombing. This seems like a good bit of world building there at the entrance of MCSE.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got this monument outside that I think is to dead astronauts who've died in the line of duty.
Did they never recover Gordo and Trace's statue that used to be there?
I didn't see it.
Oh, man.
They either didn't show it or they replaced it with this and put their names on there. But that thing's going to fill up, man.
Yeah.
As more people go into space, there will be more and more deaths. When do they stop updating it? Is that like 2005? They're just going to be like, there's too many deaths. Miles died. 600 miners died. We can't do this.
They'll find an empty place in the National Mall and do like a Vietnam War style. Just like, we can just keep chiseling names on this forever if we have to.
Yeah.
Or more likely, they'll just stop keeping like they'll be after the first 1,000 people die in space. It's just say no more memorials. This is commonplace.
Yeah. So I guess get in early if you're gonna get in.
True.
All right. A lady gets a call at home from work, but she doesn't answer. And actually, she's missed 4 calls, but she claims she's good to her husband, and then he leaves with the kids, and she ignores a 5th call.
Do you think, because like it's interesting, like her eldest was there when she melted down. Do you think, that he's going to say something to his dad about like, Mom fucking whited out at work the other day, and it caused a real stir, and she hasn't been to work since. Like, because I don't think she can just pass off of like, oh, everything's fine. I don't think it's going to be the first paycheck that doesn't come that he's going to, because he's always been good to her and pretty like pays attention to her. I think he'll suss things out soon enough.
Yeah, he sees something's weird here. He's just on his way out. He can't
just doesn't know what it is
now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, the son, I hadn't considered that wrinkle because he, I think, was there.
Why else establish that?
All right, let's go to Margo waking up again, performing her morning rituals. A woman strikes up a conversation with her on the bench, and interestingly, she speaks English. She tells her that she needs to be patient, like a bird, like a northern bullfinch. And then the woman gets up, leaving behind a phone number, which Margo picks up. This was interesting, because like after she's been shunned by the official channels here, I find it, and she should find it, all too coincidental that someone is now presenting her with a back channel under the radar opportunity here.
If Margo had only gone to the KGB, none of this season would have happened. It's this, because this, like, if I wasn't on my radar that Russia might be falling to internal separatist movements. Okay.
Yes.
That wasn't on my preseason bingo. I was thinking more of like, this is an obvious test. Like Katish is ready to call your expertise, but like, the powers that be need to make sure that Margo can be trusted. So they're going to see if she will take this to the KGB. I don't know, but I feel like that's the best play for Margo, is to just take this to the official channels and, wash your hands of it.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason to call this number unless you are extraordinarily bored, which I think she is, or have a death wish. Like, those are the only 2 reasons.
And also, like, it's this lady, this fellow babushka, is giving me mixed signals, because she's saying, oh, if I was a Margo, I would be patient and wait for the spring. Also, here's a call to action immediately that you can take right now. You can take it. Aren't you curious? Like, what the fuck?
I
like, to me, that like the way to do that is to make the contact and be like, hey, just fucking chill, okay? Just chill. But don't give her something to do, because Margo is not a chill person. If you know anything about her record, she's not even chill about playing jazz, and you kind of have to be. So,
and they know this,
I thought that was weird. So,
which
to me,
means
it
they're
feels
probably
like
using
test.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I could see it. It could be a test, or does Margo think that this is maybe Sergei trying to communicate with her?
The lady does have flawless English. Is this like a CIA back channel that they're trying to they're going to bring her back into the fold?
It's the only other reason I could think that she wouldn't just go right to the authorities with it.
Because that's the thing. It's like, how in the world does America know? Now, it does seem like that she's pretty fairly large and in charge, but I have no idea. I have no idea where she's at. Is she she's monitored all the time? I don't know. But that was one of the other questions is she doesn't seem to be in any kind of state control. So how do they keep her from calling America or sending an email or doing whatever? I don't know.
I don't think it's that, but it might be going through her head is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
All right, on a whim, because we just realized, oh shit, we got screeners. No one maybe ever has done this before. We called the phone number on the screen, 095-042-7621. And a very big trouble for moose and squirrel type voice came on. And what did they say?
You are not able to make calls to this number.
Yeah. So, as far as FAM fucking with ARGs this season?
Maybe.
Or is that just a fun little Easter egg?
Maybe that number existed and they used it because they knew that it said that? Is that what you're getting at? Or do they make this number?
They're making this number, and it's because every once in a while you'll see this, Breaking Bad didn't do ARGs, but every once in a while they'd have a phone number we could call Madrigal Electromotive, or do something. This is a little fun. Didn't go anywhere. It's just fun. But increasingly shows do this and they go somewhere. It's you're gonna
Mr. Robot.
Episode 6 gonna be. Yeah, Mr. Robot's a shining example. You're gonna be logging into kgb.gov.ru. And entering in how many sunflower seeds Margo fed to the pigeons this week to find out how much Ovaltine you got to drink. I don't know, but we'll keep an eye on it. It would be kind of
cool if this was an ARG to help people figure out what's going on here.
Can you imagine the ARGs you could do? Because like Apple TV Plus, they got some of the most fascinating ARG ready shows. I mean, you could do Severance.
Yeah.
Silo. They got the Foundation would be a really interesting kind of math. You could do some really cool math based stuff with that. Maybe, I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I might want to call that number after the episode airs because it might just not be in service at the moment. But
true. Yeah,
we'll see.
Just check in on it every week.
All right, let's go to Will spotting Danielle in the halls of the MCSC, and he says hi. Apparently he's engaged now, and Danielle congratulates him and then tells Will about Hobson's offer to her. He thinks she should take the position. She's not sure she can, given what happened with Danny. Still won't tell us. God damn it. And he says, look, you got to move on, but that's not an option for her.
I do respect the hell out of the show not doing the thing, because it'd be so weird for her and Will, like in real life you say that. You don't every time you're catching up with your old friend, you'd be like, yeah, the last time I divorced my wife because of the one, it's you just say, yeah, after what happened with, Emily or whatever. And it's
sure.
Oh yeah, fucking. So it's we're just it's so realistic, and it makes me wonder how are they going to tell the story? Is it going to be Amber looking at headlines? Is it going to be 5 seconds of some kind of documentary that's going to be in the background playing for? It's the show's good at how they eventually reveal that data, and you could be frustrated with not knowing it up front, but on the other hand, damn, It's extremely realistic for the characters to behave like this 8 years later.
Oh yeah, and I'm not frustrated. I'm mocking frustration here.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun, but it is something I really want to know about, and they've done a great job teasing me. So, yeah, we'll see how they reveal it. I'm trying to think of a very natural way to do that, and nothing really comes to mind here. Maybe we can see like a
good at it.
memorial up on Mars
Yeah.
for him or something, and
Yeah.
one of the other astronauts can see it. But yeah, it's, I don't know, tricky.
Or maybe like late in the season, Danny and Ed can like be trapped in a no-win situation, and they just talk about it.
Oh, good, Danny.
The way they set up the evil Danny and Ed last season in the lava tube. But they didn't. That's the thing, is they also never really got around to talking about the thing we all wanted them to talk about. Well,
Karen, no.
I won't say that I wanted to talk about. It's more of like, Jesus Christ, can you get this over with so we can move beyond this stupid plot?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's like, as much as I want to know, also fuck you writers for having me invested in this stupid fucking storyline that I've hated since season 2.
Do you think that's a reason that they... Well, I'm going to say he's dead. That's my guess. Do you think that's a reason that they killed him off-season? Is because they knew that the audience didn't like his plotline at all?
It's the only way they get away with having us think about him. Yeah, I don't know. There also might be a little bit of a troll. It's like, because they have to be aware that everyone hates and is grossed out by this entire plot line. You know, like, it's not just us. Like, the whole damn, all the places this place is discussed on, everyone hates the storyline. All the professional critics that are still. So it's like, they gotta know. So are they trolling us a little bit? It's like, because like in real life, if the situation had happened, it'd be legit traumatic for everybody. So it's a great. It's
very dramatic.
Karen's creepy indiscretion with the boy she helped raise 3 seasons ago has kicked off some spicy meatballs worth of drama, but at what cost for all mankind? At what cost?
No, this is exactly, and I don't know if this is a Ron Moore special or what, but this is exactly what they did in my mind with Kai Wynn over in Deep Space Nine. I hated that character. Every time that character came on screen, I died inside. And yet, when I think back on Deep Space Nine, it's a big part of what made that show. And I love that show. So
yeah,
I don't necessarily resent the plot line or making me sit through this stuff. I just don't like the characters. And it's okay to hate a character, I think. And I won't say this is done as well as the Kai Wynn stuff. Because some of this is just like, I don't want to engage with the story here.
Well, another one, like, go back to Ronald Moore's past, is President Rosalind in Battlestar Galactica. I don't know how she turned it, because I got off that show early on, but like, to me, that was a character that was also designed to be fucking hateable and hissable and booable. But Kai Wynn, President Rosalind. Maybe we just hate women, Jim. Maybe we just hate women in charge in positions of power and authority, and we just instinctively want to tear them down. Well, she's the exception. She's the best of us.
No, I mean bad Danny. We hate him,
know.
and he's a man. I don't understand. Right. My brain is breaking. Isn't he supposed to be a woman? I hate him.
Danny?
No.
I'm lost at 6 levels of the sauce now.
Apparently, yeah. All right, well, then it's time to move on. We see Danielle and Miles on a NASA ship called Unity in NASA uniforms, presumably headed to Mars.
I thought it was a slick transition for Tyler to quote when the Saints go marching in, and then them to kind of have that little, New Orleans kind of jazzy little send-off for everybody.
Yeah, Louis Armstrong track. This is probably the most famous version of that song, I would say. Yeah, it's great. And I love the name of the ship, Unity. That feels very Danielle, right? That's the ship you would want her to go up in.
I thought it was an obvious homage to 2001, too. Like, this long, skinny space transport reminded me of the lunar shuttle on 2001.
I can't recall what that looks like.
And then
we get one final shot here where Ed is on Mars. He's just sitting around smoking a cigarette, contemplating his choices. He's smoking a cigarette.
A cigarette?
On Mars?
Maybe a jazz cigarette. This is a doob if I've ever seen one.
Oh, you think? How did he get that up there?
Yeah.
Is it legal?
I'm telling you, I told you and Pete, the Martian hydro scene is
he
got to be seen to be believed.
Does he have a grow up with his own shit where he's brought up weed seeds?
but he slaps some Martian redbacks into the right engineer's hands that does have some pull in the hydro dome, and yeah.
Which country you think is bringing up the weed seeds of the M7?
Yeah, so you had the M7, and it's Russia, it's France, it's the UK, it's Canada, it's the United States, it's Australia,
is it Canada? Well, they're
Jamaica. Jamaica, out of nowhere, the last of the of the M7.
Nah, that blunt would be way bigger. Way bigger.
Yeah, they're like, it's like when the guy comes for the medicine, he's like, he adjusted, like, oh god, this is like a 70-year-old white guy. All right, this is
right.
not a Snoop Lion. This is not a Snoop Lion joint.
Yeah, and he didn't smoke weed until 8 years ago when his wife died. So
right. He has to smoke weed for the trauma of him smoking weed, because it betrays everything that he thought he was as Ed Baldwin.
No, I was going to go the other way with this because I didn't think it was a jazz cigarette, but it probably is, given that jazz is playing. Literally, they're playing jazz over him smoking. Are you allowed to smoke in an oxygen-rich hab environment?
With all the
Mars?
filters and stuff, I mean...
Even if you're the XO?
This has got a long history on this show, going back to the Trace and Gordo era of her exploiting the airlock loophole. But I do want... Yeah.
How does it get up here, man? You need to be combing through the shit that people are bringing up to...
But you know how small 100 marijuana seeds are?
Yes, very.
You could smuggle them on the back of a hamburger bun.
You could keister them, no problem.
Keister them. You could pocket them in your lint, like, you know, pick them out of your pocket lint. Like, we're talking like, you know, like mustard grain type of deals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
maybe
that's what
maybe
I think
he's
it is.
keistering these dubes and he just couldn't handle the Snoop Lion dube.
Yeah, that's true. That's a lot more to keister. I don't know. And the Snoop Lion dube is on a whole other level for even the Snoop Dogg. Like, that's when he went through that Lion phase, and they kicked. Didn't they kick him out of reggae? And he went back to the regular.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's some obscure rap history.
I don't know. He's got the shakes. He's got a 1,000-yard stare. He's not coming back. No way.
Yeah, because like,
I don't know
if
it's this season or next, but
like his whole life is given to space and NASA. Like, being at the end of that, and like, I'm just gonna go on, like, it's like that whole thing of like, it's like a sad story. It's like one day you'll put down your child for the last time and you won't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, Ed will, like, one day you will set down on Earth for the last time, and you won't, but like, he's gonna know it, you know, like, this is gonna be my last time. And
yeah, seems like it.
It's got to be like stopping being an NFL quarterback times 1,000,000, you know, or like it's got to be up there with like no longer being the president, you know, in terms of like how your life transforms. I can see why you'd want to put it off.
For sure. And it is selfish, without a doubt.
Yes.
I mean, Olga is totally right about that. He's a very selfish man, but
people do
selfish
selfish things. Yep.
Does that make him a bad person? Maybe in some people's eyes, sure.
Means he's a person that does bad things sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's it. That's it for the episode. Holy cow. Mega show.
Yeah, it took us a while to get back. Yeah, we had to catch up. It's been 8 years of history to go through. A lot of speculation. Probably irrelevant by the time, you know, they're just going to come out and tell us what's the deal with Danny eventually. But
yeah.
You know, that's why we do the show, right? Of course, we are recording this from the future, from just a couple days before you will see the series premiere. I'm sure you have thoughts. We're gonna be putting a line out there for people to send them in. FAM stands for All Mankind. FAM at baldmove.com is how you want to send in your feedback about the episode. I'm not sure if we will be doing a retrospective feedback at the end of each episode going forward, or whether we'll have enough to justify a standalone episode. We'll see. FAM at baldmove.com. If you'd like to find out other things that we're covering, we've always got stuff going on. We're always watching movies. We're always watching new TV shows. Best way to follow us on all that is our social media is at baldmove everywhere, except for TikTok. We're at baldestmove there. And if you'd like to support what we're doing and get more audio and video content, ditch the ads, get ad-free feeds. It's real easy. Go to support.baldmove.com to join our club and get more information. That's it. Until next week, for All Mankind, we'll be here next week with the next episode as it drops on Apple TV+. Until then, I'm your host, A.Ron.
And I'm Jim.
Bye, Bob.